the structure, right? And when you're talking about getting business loans, they can't stop you. And this was the problem with a lot of people because these things are done so covertly, you can't tell because there's layers of white supremacy. Okay, so even we could come out of a form of slavery, destitution, extreme poverty, and then when we transcend that level of poverty, the struggle to get from one level to the next will intimate that we're free, but we're actually in another condition of slavery, right? So when we talk about getting loans, it's not in our face cut and dry that this is racist, the system itself, but then they have things like credit card redlining, right? Where you can't deny a person of credit on account to their race, but you can ask what zip code they're from. And we know we can pretty much target a certain demographic based on the corresponding zip codes. So what they'll do is actually a zip code, and then what we don't know is called credit card redlining, where they say, well, anybody that's in these particular zip codes, deny them of credit or don't approve them of that much. So then you have to get hip to it. Like one thing that we do to get around that is you may get a UPS mailbox address because it's considered residential. And we'll say get the UPS mailbox address in a community that where most people are average in the rankings of the 5%. Right. The 5% is anybody that's making $150,000 or more a year that could afford to invest at least 1/3 of their money, which means they have the capabilities of growing wealth. So anybody in the 5% has the capability of growing wealth. So it'd be predetermined that they can be approved for a higher credit score, right? Or be approved for a higher loan. So you get that outside of those credit card redlining areas, and then it empowers you to be able to get loans. But the reason why that's even designed in the first place is to alienate certain demographics, particularly of our race, and whoever else they may want to target.
Was you getting this kind of financial advice before, Metta? Before?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
You know, Polite is deep. You know, he's very empowering, like I said. You know, but I had a lot of great people around me, a lot of great managements. I had TriStar Management, great management group. And they really taught me a lot. But I had to take it upon myself, you know, to learn, you know, different things.
Now, you speak multiple languages. What's the language you said you made up?
Nduasusu. It means living language.
How do you just make a language?
Well, from studying other languages, a lot of languages are built upon a principle like a trilateral root. So, like, you might have, like, in Arabic, you might have makon, right? Or you might have makan, right, which means place. And then in Hebrew, you may have makon, which means place. And then in the Paddic, you may have makun, which means place. So the vowels change, right? But the trilateral root or the consonants are the same, M, K, and N. You feel me? So, and a lot of these languages, like kitab or katub, means scripture or means book, you kind of pick up what they're saying. Now, people, because of probably religious reasons and their insecurities, they may not want to contend that there's a similitude to the different languages because they want to be exclusive in their own right. But a person that's just genuine and studying the languages, you can see how these languages springboarded from a source language. So once you kind of get an understanding of the trilateral root from Proto-Semitic languages, it becomes a lot more easier. But the reason why I created a language is because we have to reestablish our sovereignty. And we're not talking about throwing your birth certificate in the water and social security card and all that stuff. We're talking about just having some kind of autonomous control over our culture. You understand? And you can tell who's colonized, or you can tell who colonized the people based on the language that they speak. And if we're going to talk about being free, one of the things we have to do is reintroduce ourselves to a new tongue, whether it be a tongue that is ancient, that most people are not speaking of, or one that we just create from scratch so no one can tell us the right way to say it once we start learning it. We need some kind of control because language transmission is deep. It impacts the way that our brain grows. And so they de-emphasized, in the 1600s, the London Missionary Society de-emphasized language because they understand, like, their gene's called the ASPM gene. When you speak tonal languages, it actually helps the brain grow. So you'll see people have different sized craniums from different parts of the world that speak tonal languages. Tonal languages use sounds differently from, like, English. Like, English has been de-emphasized, right? So you'll have, and when you learn English, you'll find that it's harder to study other languages. But people whose native tongue is tonal have an easier time learning other languages. That's not by coincidence. So, like, we look at the word Michael, right? CH is pronounced like a K, right? But in the older time or older English, it's pronounced like a het, like in Hebrew, right? Or you look at the word Quran. In English, we just pronounce the K and the Q the same exact way. But the Q is supposed to be pronounced like from the back of the throat, like when we making fun of the Africans, right? And exactly, something like that. That's a Q sound.
Yeah.
K and Q don't sound alike. Why would someone create a language and make a K and a Q sound exactly alike? That's not true. It's because the tones have been de-emphasized. So like the word light, L-I-G-H-T, one of the ancient Hebrew letters that's not even in contemporary Hebrew, right? Proto-Semitic language phonetics shows us that GH is supposed to have a guttural sound and is let off by the constricting of the throat. So light should be, that's a GH, the same sound that the babies make, which is very important because when you make these sounds or you use the mouth palate, the uppermost part of the mouth, what it causes is your tonsils to vibrate, right? And it causes your appendix to vibrate. And that sets something off in the body that causes neurons to just explode. And then neurons shoot from one side of the brain to the next and connect dendrites. And then it creates an information highway. And what you're doing is sewing the brain together. It's not big to be a genius. You just have to use the left cerebral hemisphere and the right cerebral hemisphere. You feel what I'm saying? So you'll find when we look all over the world, we drive on the left side. We use the left side of the wheel when we're driving. But you go on the other side of the wheel, you use the right side. The toilet bowl goes clockwise, and the other side counterclockwise. When we want to inspire people or make them spiritual, we communicate, we speak it, right? We do lectures, we chant, we say Jesus. But on the other side, they breathe and they meditate. Over here, people are obese. Over there, people are skinnier, right? So what we find is the planet is on a 23.5-degree axis. So it's on a tilt. So you tend to use one eye more than the other, one leg more than the other. You lean to one side more than the other. So to enhance your consciousness, you have to either travel or make a more concerted effort to exercise the other part of the brain. So the left side is math, science, language, and reading. The right side is music, art, emotions. Sometimes when people say no words could express what I feel, it's because words is on the left side and feeling is on the right, and they didn't make a connection. And that's what consciousness is holistically, which would make you a genius.
So how do you balance it out?
Well,
Like, what are some of the exercises you could do?
Oh, balancing it out, one of the best things to do, because it's called a living language, is to eat live food or to take good herbs like coppadula, sarsaparilla, cheney root, monkey ladder, greenback. These are herbs. Every taste corresponds with a healing modality. So what happens is cancer's high in our community because we don't eat bitter food. Bitter corresponds with anti-cancer agents. The more bitters you have, the least susceptible and prone you'll be to cancer. We're talking about being alive again. Being alive is predicated upon having a megahertz frequency of 72 to 90 via the brain. If the brain is powered at 72 to 90 megahertz, scientific fact, by Dr. Taino, who scaled frequencies of the human body in 1992. So you can look it up as a source, but he's not the only source. 72 to 90 megahertz causes the body to be healthy. Right? Scientific death, which a lot of people walking around here scientifically dead, starts at 25 megahertz. Cancer starts at 42 megahertz. Disease in general starts at 58 megahertz. Candida is 55 megahertz. If a person has cancer, they're on a 42 megahertz frequency. Geniuses vibrate at 80 megahertz upward. Health in general is 72 to 90. So what we're talking about here is keeping the body alive, but we have to eat the right foods that invoke a higher frequency of thought. If we don't have a higher frequency, then there we go. We're closer and closer to death. So you can actually be walking around here scientifically dead. Even though your eyes are open and your lips are moving, we have to make sure that we eat foods that sustain at least the standard of living, which is 72. But the ideal is to try to get to 80 plus. But even the music throws us off a little because that's a part of frequencies. And when we go back to our cultures of antiquity, our music was natural. So like even if we use the drum, we was employing two different sciences. Botany, right, which is the plant kingdom, the bark of the drum, and then zoology, which is the skin of the drum. So we was in tune and in conformity with nature. You feel what I'm saying? The music used to be at middle C. Now it's at A, which means it's speeding up. So it's actually causing advanced glycation N, which is an acronym for age, which means we're getting older by listening to the music. This is why they don't want women that's pregnant or conceiving to stand in front of a microwave. Why? Because food is being heated up by what? Way of sound waves. They use sound waves to heat up the food. And if you stand in front of those sound waves while you conceiving, it could destroy the child. But what if you're not conceiving a child? Then you're destroying yourself, right? So if the music is speeding up and you're wearing headphones and it's turned on at high intervals, and it's not moving at middle C, but it's at A, we're going to get thrown off. But a lot of us don't read music no more anyway.
Is that like radiation?
That's exactly what it is. And then the frequency. The radiation is a form of frequency. So the radiation being precipitated is around Candida, towards Candida and Cancer.